Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how the first 3 rounds of your 2023 fantasy football drafts should look. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying, then please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. It is important to note that I am mixing my rankings with how I feel the draft is going to go. There are going to be certain players that I draft in maybe the second or the third round, or even the first round, that I might have waited on drafting a little bit longer, but I think they would get drafted where they are because of where most players, fantasy football players, value them, and based upon current ADP. So without further ado, let's get in video. We begin with the number 1 overall pick. Now, I think unlike years prior where the running back was a staple of the number 1 overall pick, this year we are going to be seeing a wide receiver go number 1 in a majority of drafts, and that wide receiver is Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson is both an incredibly safe pick as well as a pick with a ton of upside. He is very safe because he is in an offense that is going to have to throw the ball a ton. In prior years, they like to run the rock a bunch, but under Kevin O'Connell, they're a very high-tempo offense, and that is mainly because their defense is absolutely terrible. So late in games, they're going to have to be forced to put the pedal to the metal and throw the ball a ton. Justin Jefferson's the clear number 1 wide receiver on this team. I know Kirk Cousins gets a lot of shit, but ultimately Kirk Cousins is a lot better than people give him the credit for, and I think that Justin Jefferson is very clearly worthy of the number 1 overall pick, and I think he has the upside to smash over 2,000 receiving yards in 2023. Next up, we move to the number 2 overall pick, and here we are going to go back to the basics with Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, obviously, in past years, McCaffrey is the type of running back that would go number 1 overall, but this year, I think people are leaning more towards wide receivers early on, and I would lean with Justin Jefferson if I had the number 1 overall pick, but Christian McCaffrey is equally as safe. This is a guy that is in an offense that is ran by a run game guru in Kyle Shanahan. He is going to open up the field for Christian McCaffrey. There are going to be times where McCaffrey gets the ball and there is not even a defender remotely near him and he's just going to run directly into the end zone. That's how great the O-line is, and that is how great Kyle Shanahan is in the run game. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the National Football League. He has the upside to get over 1,000 rushing as well as 1,000 receiving yards, and I think that Christian McCaffrey is an incredibly safe option early in fantasy drafts, again, with that huge upside. I think the first 5-6 guys that we're to be talking about in today's video that go in the first round are just, unless an injury happens, knock on wood, as safe as it gets. At number 3, we're going to go with Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Jamar Chase, just like Justin Jefferson, ever since they stepped foot in the National Football League, they have been dicking defenses down, and they're both from LSU. Justin Jefferson, obviously, with the worst quarterback in Kirk Cousins compared to Joe Shiesty. Jamar Chase has some more competition in the offense, though, with T. Higgins as well as Tyler Boyd, but ultimately Jamar Chase has that exact same upside. He is the number 1 receiver on his team, and they are going to be scoring a boatload of points. I think they are one of the best offenses in the NFL, and you can make the argument that Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Mr. Patrick Mahomes, so I'm a huge fan of Jamar Chase this season. Again, an incredibly safe option. At number 4, I think this is where Austin Eckler could go, but I'm going to be going with Cooper Kupp here. I have Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill incredibly close in my rankings. I have Tyreek ranked ahead of Cooper Kupp, but I think based upon my analysis of doing a bunch of mock drafts and seeing what people are doing, Cooper Kupp typically goes ahead of Tyreek Hill, and to me, it is basically a coin flip. Now, I know Matthew Stafford is kind of worrisome, right? But all the reports out of Sean McVay are that things are going to be just fine for him, and he is going to be good to go for week number 1. Cooper Kupp is coming off of a season where he also got hurt, but the season prior, he was the Triple Crown winner. Most receiving yards, most receptions, and most touchdowns. This guy was dominant in 2021, and he won the Super Bowl because of it. Again, Cooper Kupp is a really, really safe player, and there's not too much that I need to say about him to convince you to draft draft him. But the funny thing is, in some leagues, he goes around pick 7, 8, or 9, which I think is hilarious because at the end of the season, you're going to look back and be like, wow, maybe I should have drafted Cooper Kupp as like the number 1 overall pick potentially if he finishes as the wide receiver number 1 at pick number 5. We move to Austin Eckler of the LA Chargers, another elite running back, just like Christian McCaffrey has the upside for 1,000 rushing as well as 1,000 receiving yards. The difference though is Eckler isn't going to be given as many opportunities on the ground. I know they moved to Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator and people are worried that magically the touches are going to disappear like Houdini in terms of getting receiving work because in Dallas they didn't dump off a bunch to the running back. Well, we all know Justin Herbert, the pervert, loves dumping the ball off to Austin Eckler, and Kellen Moore would have to be a certified dumbass if he didn't scheme up plays to get the ball into the hands of Austin Eckler, who is arguably, besides Justin Herbert, the best offensive weapon on this team. At number 6, we're going to go with Tyreek Hill. A lot of people going into last season were nervous about Tyreek Hill because he's going from this god of men, right? Patrick Mahomes, and then he goes to Tua Tagovailoa, who is largely unproven, while Tyreek Hill basically bitch-slapped Will Smith style the NFL and anyone who doubted him because he put up his best season ever, doing so with multiple games without Tua, with Skylar Thompson as well as with Teddy Bridgewater. This year, if Tua is able to stay healthy, I think Tyreek Hill could easily be the number 1 wide receiver. Again, these first 6 picks, I feel like they are on a tier together. I feel like they are all incredibly safe, and I am excited for all of the upside that these guys present in 2023. At pick number 7, we are going to go with Stefon Diggs. Now, Stefon Diggs did show up to training camp looking a little bit angry. I don't know if anyone saw that picture. It looks like when your mom dropped you off at camp and you didn't actually want to go to summer camp, you wanted to stay home and play fucking Call of Duty or something. But Stefon Diggs is another safe player in a really good offense, right? Stefon Diggs doesn't really get much competition added to the offense. Sure, they bring in Dalton Kincaid, but let's be honest, a rookie tight end, how much usage will he get? Gabe Davis was obviously a hot topic of last year, but he flamed and burned out. Not a great season out of him. Stefon Diggs, the clear number 1 wide receiver. I do think the Buffalo Bills are a team that is on the decline, but I don't think that's really going to impact the play of Stefon Diggs because I think Josh Allen will be just as good as he was last season, and he also has the upside to get even better. At number 8, we are going to go to Bijan Robinson, but at number 8 is where I would first really start to consider taking Travis Kelce in a 12-team league. Now, in a 10-team league, I can galaxy brain myself into taking Travis Kelce higher because in a 10-team league, I believe the positional advantage of having that elite tight end is more important because most teams in a 10-team league, as long as you're drafting with competent people, the teams are going to be loaded to the gills with talent. But in 12-team leagues, there are going to be some teams with even people who are good at drafting that 6 weeks into the season are absolute dog shit. They don't have any running backs to start. Injuries happen, right? But in 10-team leagues, the waiver's a lot easier, so it's more unlikely that that is going to happen. So in a 12-team league, I still like Travis Kelce. I just don't want to take him as highly as pick number 8 because I'd rather just have Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson is locked and loaded to be the workhorse running back in this offense for the Atlanta Falcons. This is a team that ran Tyler Algier like he was fucking Bo Jackson, Walter Payton, something like that last year. They paid the pretty penny to draft Bijan Robinson super high in the 2023 NFL draft, and they are going to use him a ton, and I think he also has some solid pass-catching upside. At number 9, we are going to go with Travis Kelce. This is, again, the spot where I feel much better about drafting him. Again, I don't think the positional advantage at tight end is as important in a 12-team league, but there is just something to say about the confidence you have in your lineup when Travis Kelce is there. When you have, say, tight end number 11 or 12, right? You got Dalton Schultz in your lineup. Sure, I love Dalton Schultz, but I'm not entering the week being like, you know what? This guy's getting at least 10 points. Every single week, Kelce's getting 10 points, and he has the upside to hang his nuts on the defense and score 30 fucking fantasy points because of how good he is. The Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver room is still mid. He is still going to be the best target in the red zone, and he's probably the best target overall on this team. And his quarterback is probably the best quarterback I've ever seen. Nick, Tom Brady's better. Sure, Tom Brady won more Super Bowls, but I think when all things are said and done, Patrick Mahomes will be considered the GOAT, and I know a bunch of Patriots fans are pissed off now. At number 10, we're going to go with Saquon Barkley. Now, there was some worries about a holdout with Saquon. He starts the holdout, and then like 2 days later, he folds, completely folds, and signs a contract for like $900,000 or $1 million more dollars. Great one-year deal for Saquon Barkley. They are going to give him so many touches. If they don't plan on bringing him back in 2024 to infinity and beyond, like his name was Buzz Lightyear, they are going to force feed the ball down the throat of Saquon Barkley. This is a guy that is an elite pass catcher. Now, he's not up there with Eckler because he's not going to see as many targets, or Christian McCaffrey, but he's great at catching passes. Daniel Jones looks a lot better under Brian Daboll. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit better. I think the Giants are going to get better as a team. I think Saquon Barkley is a pretty safe pick inside of the first round, though I will note this is kind of a spot where my rankings differ from what I think will actually happen. I would probably take the next couple of guys that I talk about at wide receiver ahead of Saquon Barkley, but I don't really see just 3 running backs going in the first round of most fantasy drafts, so that's why I put the wide receivers up a little bit higher, because if I just did based off my rankings, I don't think that's exactly what would actually happen. So at number 11, pick number 11, we are going to go with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. I think it is a coin flip between him and A.J. Brown to go at this spot. CeeDee Lamb is the number 1 wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys. This is another team that is incredibly high tempo. Even though they switched their offensive coordinator, I think that is going to continue. Their head coach is a fat bastard, but at the end of the day, I'm still very excited about CeeDee Lamb. He has looked better every single year he has played in the NFL. Dak Prescott is an extremely safe quarterback. There's interception problems, but last year, a lot of those interceptions, it hit the receivers in the hand, fucking bounced up in the air, hit the moon, fell back down, and then somehow someone on defense caught it. I still think CeeDee Lamb is an excellent wide receiver. I think Dak is gets discredited a lot by a ton of people, but I know why. It's because he's on the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are a team that the media talks about a ton. CeeDee Lamb, again, great wide receiver, great offense, great situation, a very safe pick. He's not in the same tier as guys like Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase Jefferson, or Tyreek Hill. But to me, you could argue that he's in a similar tier to Stephon Diggs. At number 12, we are going to go with Davante Adams. Now, this is where I kind of differ from a lot of fantasy football players. It seems like in a lot of leagues, Davante Adams is going to go in the second round. But if I was to pick 112 and I can get him at the 1-2 turn, I'm going to take him. I know people are worried about Jimmy Garoppolo this, Jimmy Garoppolo that. Davante Adams literally was fucking amazing last year when he had Derek Carr, who wasn't good last year. He got benched for Jarrett Stidham. Guess what? Jarrett Stidham moseys on in there, and you know what happened? Davante Adams, still amazing. Shocker, right? He is one of the best receivers in the NFL. If he was still on Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, you'd probably have to take Davante Adams as a top 4, top 5 pick, but you get him in the second round in some leagues. I get it. People are worried about the Raiders, this, that, and the other thing. People are overthinking the greatness of Davante Adams. He's not fucking 37 years old, right? He's not that old yet. Do not panic, but I know people will. At number 13, the first pick of the second round, we are going to be going with Jonathan Taylor here. Now, we might be entering into a scenario where Jonathan Taylor is quite mad at the Indianapolis Colts. I know he's trying to get a deal done, and then Jim Irsay, the GM of the team, or the owner, one or the other, and then they have Ballard as well. I'm bad at remembering which one's the GM, which one's the owner, but you get what I'm saying. Tweeted about how, oh, these running backs are a little disgruntled type of deal. I don't think that's going to go real well with Jonathan Taylor, but I don't think anything happens there. I don't think he's going to just hold out for some reason. I fully expect him to be the number 1 back on this team. I understand last year, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, he left a bad, he put a dagger in your heart, right? You draft the fucker number 1 overall, and he sinks your team like the Titanic. He was bad. The whole offense was bad. The quarterback sucked. The O-line sucks. JT gets hurt. It's all bad. But now they have Shane Steichen, or Steichen, however the fuck you say that guy's name. Look, he is going to be a better head coach than Frank Reich or Jeff Saturday. They are going to be a team that really likes to run the ball, that's going to help out Anthony Richardson a ton. The offensive line was terrible last year, but I think it's going to get better because I think the pieces that are there that are pretty solid ended up just having a down year. I'm a big fan of the talent of Jonathan Taylor. What I'm doing when it comes to drafting Jonathan Taylor is I am just pushing everything that happened last year into the back of my brain. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm remembering how great he has been in in the NFL so far, besides last year, and I'm going to bite the bullet and take him in the early second round. At number 14, we are going to be going with A.J. Brown. Now, A.J. Brown was getting drafted in the third round of drafts last year, coming from the Tennessee Titans. He was such an obvious candidate to just smash with Jalen Hurts, but people were worried about Hurts. People were worried about, is A.J. Brown going to be good without the Tennessee Titans? And basically, instead of just thinking straight, we tried to do some mental gymnastics, just like what people are doing with Devontae Adams, trying to talk themselves off of him. We try to talk ourselves out of the Eagles offense. Jalen Hurts, while I get it, he's great at running. The guy has a much better arm than people give him credit for. He had his best year for receptions and receiving yards. Last year in Philadelphia, he had the same amount of touchdowns as he did in Tennessee one of those years. The guy is really good. The Eagles offense has a great offensive line. A.J. Brown's the number one receiver on their team, and Jalen Hurts might even become a better passer. Their head coach, while looks like a fool in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl for kind of talking shit to the Chiefs, and then they take that L, and he was crying during the national anthem. But let's be honest with you, the national anthem makes me cry as well. So beautiful to start off the Super Bowl. But let's be honest here. A.J. Brown, again, these early wide receivers are just so safe. You can throw a lot of holes into the arguments of guys like Jonathan Taylor. Some people might just think this guy was like Peyton Hillis, right? He had one good year. Jonathan Taylor's a couple good years. Now he sucks. Saquon Barkley, is he really that good? Blah, 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 blah. He's injury prone, this, that, the other thing. You can talk yourself out of him, but these early wide receivers are super duper safe with a lot of upside, and that is why people are taking them a lot more often early in fantasy drafts. At number 15, we're going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 2.3. I am a huge Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god truther. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ever since his rookie year, once he started turning things on, I was in love with him. I fell for Amon-Ra St. Brown in fantasy football. This guy's a target hog. They don't have anyone there for the first 6 weeks. Nick, they just brought in Denzel Mims. Who gives a fuck about Denzel Mims? The coolest thing about him is his name sounds like Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington's pretty cool. Denzel Mims hasn't done shit in the National Football League. So the first 6 weeks, Amon-Ra St. Brown might get 13 plus targets every single game. Then Jameson Williams comes back. Sure, maybe the targets tick down a little bit, but this is a Lions offense I expect to be really good. Jamal Williams is now gone, so maybe they try to throw the ball a little bit more in the red zone, and that will help out Amon-Ra St. Brown a ton. I really think he's a safe option again with tons of upside. At the 2.4, pick number 16, we're going with my guy, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. I almost want to move Nick Chubb up past Saquon Barkley. I personally almost feel like I would draft Nick Chubb over Jonathan Taylor as well. I think Nick Chubb's upside is incredible. The Browns offense last year starts off the season with Jacoby Brissett, actually looks pretty good. Then Deshaun Watson takes over and everything goes wrong. Deshaun Watson looks like Stevie Wonder out there trying to throw the ball. He was playing quarterback for the school of blind and deaf. He could not do anything. Now, he's saying that all the haters are looking to get him, this, that, and the other thing. Well, Deshaun, you did kind of a bad thing, but, I don't, sure, you might care about that realistically, but when you're drafting your fantasy team, I don't think about the person that I'm drafting right now. I don't really get it. Nick Chubb now is potentially going to be getting more targets because Kareem Hunt is gone. We saw Nick Chubb get a bunch of targets early in 2019 when Kareem Hunt was suspended. I think he's a very safe all-around running back, and I expect Deshaun Watson to bounce back and this whole Browns offense, which makes me even more excited for the boy, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, who I think could lead the NFL in rushing yards in 2023, and if he does that and then starts getting more targets, more receptions, that's a recipe for maybe even finishing as a dark horse running back number 1. At number 17, we're going back to the well with running back, and we're going with Tony Pollard. I was someone that initially was kind of off of Tony Pollard, but then I had an epiphany. I had a realization that Tony Pollard is playing on the franchise tag, and they are going to give this man so much work. They are going to force feed the guy the ball and then leave him on the side of the street and bring in someone new to play running back in 2024, not 2014. Obviously, Tony Pollard's efficiency numbers have been insane. Last year was very efficient. The efficiency is going to go down because he's going to see a lot more carries. This guy's a great running back. They bring in an offensive coordinator that likes throwing the ball to the running back, which is something that Kellen Moore didn't previously do. Tony Pollard has all of the upside there. Again, another running back that I feel incredibly safe with here at pick 17. At number 18, we're going to go with Garrett Wilson. It is important for me to note, though, that I would rather have Jalen Waddle than him, but I think most people would go with Garrett Wilson. I was someone who was also kind of out on Garrett Wilson early on. I thought everyone was getting on the ground, getting on their knees, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below if you have enjoyed, and just gawking the fucking Jets. It feels like, almost like the Broncos last year. All of the hype, will they live up to it? I think the Jets have a better chance of living up to it, but you get what I mean, right? And maybe Rodgers is washed. And by washed, I mean just not the guy he was a couple years ago, right? Maybe he's just an average NFL quarterback. But Garrett Wilson put up really solid numbers with terrible quarterbacks, with Zach Wilson, with Joe Flacco. I like Mike White, but again, Mike White isn't all that special either. Garrett Wilson still put up good numbers. And the wide receivers around Garrett Wilson, it just looks like the old Green Bay Packers. They got Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard. They have former Chief Mecole Hardman. Just guys that are no way going to be seeing more targets than Garrett Wilson. I've already seen a million clips on Twitter. Hard Knocks is going to boost this guy, maybe to even be a first-round pick, because all these clips of Sauce Gardner versus Garrett Wilson and all this stuff, and oh, they're going to make each other better, all this, that, and the other thing. I'm starting to really buy into the hype of Garrett Wilson. Again, he looked so good last year with bad quarterback play. Imagine what could happen if the quarterback play is better. We're going to go with Jalen Waddle here with the next pick. My guy, Jalen Waddled away, Waddle, till the very next day. Now, I made a video specifically talking about Jalen Waddle. He was the second player. The first player I talked about yesterday was Garrett Wilson in that video about league-winning wide receivers that you must draft. I really like Jalen Waddle this year. Again, I'm a huge fan of the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, I'm a Dolphins fan, but I'm a huge fan of this offense just in general. Talk about this a ton. I love to talk about the Dolphins, but just because I'm a Dolphins fan isn't why I like the Dolphins. I genuinely think for fantasy purposes, they are going to be really good. If you watch my content years ago, when the Dolphins were literally a bottom of the barrel team, when they were complete and utter dog shit, I never hyped them up. Now, in terms of picks here, it looks like we're putting Hill with Waddle. I wouldn't necessarily do that in a 2 wide receiver league. In a 3 receiver league, I'm fine with it. But in a 2 wide receiver league where you're probably just starting 2 wide receivers and then another wide receiver in your flex, right? If you're able to start 4 wide receivers at once, then yeah, I'm fine with half my receivers being in the Dolphins because I love the Dolphins offense. But if just 2 of my guys are there and then I only have 1 other guy, if the Dolphins just have a shit game, right? And Tyreek maybe doesn't do that great, or Waddle, your team is going to be down bad in redraft. In best ball, obviously, I'm perfectly fine doing that. Jalen Waddle, just like with Tyreek, when Tua was in, dominant, absolutely bending defenses over the table, but when Tua was hurt, neither of them scored a single touchdown. I think big things are coming this year. Both these guys can take a slant over the middle, 99 yards to the crib, and I think people are starting to sleep on Waddle, because I've seen Waddle go in the 3rd round of some fantasy drafts. At number 20 here, we're going with Josh Jacobs. Now, there's definitely risk right now with Josh Jacobs, 100%. You take Josh Jacobs in the 2nd round and don't understand the risk, you're doing things wrong. You have to understand that Jacobs could just sit out the whole season. Now, based upon how quickly Saquon Barkley folded after that big Zoom meeting the running backs had, I think Josh Jacobs is going to report. Maybe misses all of training camp. Doesn't play in preseason, but I think as we get closer to the season, he's going to be like, yeah, I kind of want my money. I kind of want to play because I like playing football. I'm going to play. It is what it is. It sucks that I didn't get my bag, my contract, but I'll play for the franchise tag. I think that's what's going to happen. Again, the Raiders offense on paper isn't super fun. Josh Jacobs was a guy last year that I hated in fantasy. I thought this was going to be a running back by committee. Never been more wrong on something. Jacobs was the clear running back 1, and he got the receptions that we've been looking for ever since he entered into the NFL. The guy was doing it all. He was running. He was catching passes. Perfect recipe for fantasy football. Get another guy, even though the Raiders offense probably won't be that great, I think Jacobs could still be the #1 overall running back. Obviously, I don't have him ranked that high, but I think he does have that upside. Moving now to pick number 21. Can you do something for me? I got Ramondre Stevenson, but I want to also throw a pin into this. I'm kind of worried that they're going to add another running back. Now, early on in the offseason, it seemed like no one was coming there, but more recently, it seems like Uncle Leonard Fournette might show up there and be the running back #2. Now, obviously, that is not going to take Ramondre Stevenson and make him like an 8th round pick or something, because Leonard Fournette has kind of lost the luster. But at the same time, you're not drafting Ramondre Stevenson in the 2nd round. I'm not, at least, if Lenny is there, because they're going to use Lenny, right? They don't bring Lenny in and not use him. Right now, they have zilch behind him. The running backs behind him can't hold his jockstrap. But if Leonard Fournette is there, Leonard Fournette's actually pretty decent. Again, Stevenson was the sole bright spot of this Patriots offense. It was so bad, right? They have Mac Jones, they have the Zappinator, Bailey Zappi, but Ramondre Stevenson was this constant. He was dominant all season long, catching a bunch of passes as well. If they add Uncle Lenny, again, it's going to suck for Ramondre Stevenson. It doesn't make him undraftable, but it does make him undraftable, in my opinion, in the 2nd round, right? You don't want to be paying that high price for a running back in a clear committee. At number 22, we have Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry will move over Ramondre Stevenson if that does happen. I know people are saying, Nick, you're sleeping on Derrick Henry. I think technically I am, because of where I have him ranked at running back, but I don't know how you can look at these other running backs like McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan, Jacobs, Pollard, Jonathan Taylor, Stevenson, and be like, I feel very comfortable ranking him above multiple of them. If you want to say, Nick, I like Henry now a lot more because DeAndre Hopkins is there and I want to boost him above Jacobs, go right ahead. I think a lot of these guys are all in the same tier for me, right? Henry, Stevenson, I think Jacobs, Pollard, you can all consider these guys to be in a similar tier. Again, I really do like Derrick Henry. I think the addition of DeAndre Hopkins helps them out a ton, right? We all knew what was going to happen. If Treylon Burks and Chig are your main options, they are going to run the ball gently down the stream. And while that's great for volume for Henry, the defense is going to load the box. The box is going to be loaded to the maximum. But now with DeAndre Hopkins there, they have to worry about DeAndre Hopkins. Now I know, Nick, DeAndre Hopkins is getting old. Nick, DeAndre Hopkins is this. Nick, DeAndre Hopkins is that. I don't like DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy football. The Tennessee Titans are where receivers go to die. Well, even if you don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be that good, the defense is going to give him the respect. The defense is going to be worried about DeAndre Hopkins, and that's going to help out Derrick Henry a ton. Plus, they're going to be able to move the ball more effectively, get closer to the red zone, and that's the bread and butter for big man Derrick Henry. At pick number 23, we are going to go with T. Higgins. We're going to get through the whole 2nd round without drafting a quarterback. I know some people say, Nick, you got to draft quarterbacks in the early rounds. In the 3rd round is where I'm open to taking Allen, Mahomes, or Hurts. But in the first 2 rounds, there are too many good players here for me to miss on them to draft a quarterback. I just can't do it. I get it in the 3rd round. The 3rd round, there's a lot more players that the question marks start to be there, right? Spoiler, Najee Harris, I'm going to put him in the 3rd round. I would not draft Najee Harris in the 3rd round, but some people will. I get it, but I also don't really trust him enough to do that. So, would I rather have Najee Harris or Jalen Hurts? I'd rather have Jalen Hurts. But some of the players, again, more risky than others, or my confidence level in them is lower than others. But again, the first 2 rounds, I cannot talk myself into a quarterback over T. Higgins. I just really can't. T. Higgins is the 1B to Jamar Chase's 1A. If something happens to Jamar Chase, the legitimate upside of T. Higgins is top 3 wide receiver. Where you put Jamar Chase every single week in that matchup, you would just put T. Higgins. If T. Higgins was on a bunch of other teams in the NFL, he would be the #1 wide receiver. T. Higgins is going to get a humongous bag with the Cincinnati Bengals. In the offseason, I believe they are going to pay him. They're going to pay Chase. They're going to pay Joe Shiesty, Joe Burr. There's a great offense to be a part of. Again, he's a very safe player. He's going to be like wide receiver 10 through 15 every single week. And if something happens to Jamar Chase, the upside is top 5, top 3 every single week. To close out the 2nd round, we are going to go with Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. Now, I would personally take Devontae Smith ahead of him, but I get why people like Chris Olave more. He is the #1 receiver on his team. The problem is, though, for me, I'm a little bit worried about Michael Thomas. I think everyone is writing off Michael Thomas like they wrote off Geno Smith last year, and Michael Thomas might just have 2 more years left in the tank. If Thomas stays healthy all year, I don't think Olave finishes top 8, if I'm being honest. I just think that he commands too many targets for that to be possible. But if Michael Thomas flames out, fucking stubs his pinky toe and is out for the season in week 3, then Chris Olave probably finishes top 10, top 8, maybe even top 5. Derek Carr loves to just let that fucker fly, throw it deep down the field, which would be huge for Chris Olave. Again, I do put slight worry, though, on the pick because I am worried about the potential of Michael Thomas staying healthy, and then that really will end up derailing the upside of Chris Olave. First pick of the 3rd round, we're going with DeVonta Smith, the 1B to AJ Brown's 1A. Incredible speed, Heisman winner, great offense, great player, great offensive line, going to score a lot of points, going to be more inconsistent than AJ Brown, but at the same time, the upside in any given week is incredibly high. I think if you're actually picking based upon upside of T. Higgins versus DeVonta Smith, I think the upside weekly of Smith is a lot higher, but the safety goes with T. Higgins, so that's why I lean with T. Higgins. Again, I think early on in drafts, you want to be a little bit safer. Wrap that metaphorical condom around your team at pick 26 or the 3.2. We are going to go with the second tight end, and that is going to be Mark Andrews. I find it incredibly easy to click draft on Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. I just really do believe in the talent of Mark Andrews. I think, based upon everything I've read, this Ravens offense is going to be a little bit more pass heavy. I think the addition of Odell is going to take some of the coverage away from Mark Andrews. They're going to be more worried about Odell because we all know, even though Odell is getting older, he just had all that fucking ACL problems, he's still a red zone threat. They just used him as a red zone threat, that would be fine because that's like where he makes the money. He makes those crazy catches in the end zone. Mark Andrews is very safe. Again, it's going to be a more pass-heavy team. We know Lamar loves him in the red zone. We know Lamar loves throwing the ball to him. And even with Flowers, Hollywood Brown still there, who's not actually there anymore. He's in Arizona. Rashad Master Bateman is who I meant to talk about. Rashad Bateman, Hollywood Brown. I love the Hollywood Brown. That's why I said it. So Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr. I still think Mark Andrews is going to succeed in this offense. Again, there's really something to be said about having that super safe tight end on your team. We don't have to worry about this guy might score 4 fucking points, right? Andrews is always going to be a solid play with the upside of having a week winning game. At number 27, we have a guy that I think by the end of August is going to move up into the 2nd round. That's Breece Hall. There's clearly the risk of early on in the season, they're going to wait to ramp him up. Early on in the season, many people might say you were a dumbass for taking Breece Hall because he might not get enough touches early on to actually succeed. Even if the Jets live up to be the Jets, if you look at their schedule early on, it's pretty tough, pretty hard. So I wouldn't say that if he doesn't succeed in the first month, you should just trade him for a half-eaten bag of potato chips and a used condom. But what I will say is you have to understand when you draft him that there is the risk of low usage and a bad start to the season because they have tough opponents. I mean, week 1, they fucking open against the Buffalo Bills. And again, I think the Buffalo Bills are on the decline, the schlump, but still got good defense. A great offense, right? That's going to be a really tough game. First game for Rodgers. Breece Hall probably on a restricted workload, lower workload. I don't think Breece Hall is going to have a huge game there first couple of games, but man, oh man, this guy is fast, uber efficient last season. Looked like he was set up to be maybe one of the best rookie running back seasons ever. Just derailed by injury. And obviously the fact that he's coming off that serious of an injury, that also just makes him a risk. We know that, right? Drafting running backs off of injuries like that has clear risk because, Adrian Peterson had that great season, but not a lot of other guys did. But I think Breece Hall might just be different. He might just be a different beast. Now we move to pick number 28, which is the 3.04. We are going to go with our first quarterback, and that is going to be Jalen Hurts. Now, if you want to say, Nick, I like Mahomes better. Nick, I like Allen better. Not going to really argue with you. Again, super safe pick. Great rushing upside. Could rush for like 12 touchdowns. Could rush for 1,000 rushing yards. And rushing yards are super important. Rushing touchdowns are super important in fantasy football. The way scoring works is just so heavily boosted in fantasy football for the guys that can run the ball. You have to throw the ball 25 yards to get 1 point in most leagues. Run 10 yards to get 1 point. Not rocket scientists. And it's not rocket science, right? In a lot of leagues, it's 4 point per passing touchdown, 6 point per rushing touchdown. So if Hurts runs in a touchdown, you get 2 more points than if he threw it, right? Mahomes isn't going to run the ball, but the reason why people like him so much, and why I like him so much, obviously, is that even though the offense kind of sucks, like if you look at the wide receiver weapons, they have a good O-line, but the wide receiver options suck. Besides Kelsey, he's just so good that it doesn't really matter. So Mahomes is going to be my quarterback 2 in this draft. If you want to go with Allen ahead of him, not going to argue. Again, not a lot of rushing upside, but even with garbage weapons, he could throw for 5,000 yards. He could throw for 35, 40, 50 fucking touchdowns. If you pray to the football gods above, maybe that could happen. Again, Mahomes is just a different beast. He is, in my opinion, he will finish his career as the best quarterback, the greatest of all time, surpassing Tom Brady. Then we're going to go with Josh Allen. We're going to make it incredibly simple. 3 quarterbacks in a row. You see that happen a lot. Now, something you don't want to do is if you are the 3.7, your team number 7, you're sitting here, do not panic and take Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. Not panic and do that. Because you could probably get those guys in the 4th round. You can maybe get Justin Fields in the 5th or the 6th round. So just because a quarterback run starts to happen, don't panic. I see it happen all the time in drafts. Good quarterbacks go, people start to panic. In a super flex league, panic. You should be panicking. The red light, fucking DEFCON 5 should be going off in your head. But in a 1 quarterback league, you don't need to just reach up the board and take that next quarterback again. Josh Allen, great rushing upside, great quarterback, solid offense. Stephon Diggs. Again, like with these quarterbacks, I don't think I need to get on my knees and suck them off because we all know how good they are and the offensive situations. At 31, we got a guy that definitely a deeper cut. A lot of people have him going in the 4th round, but I have just been drafting this guy a ton, especially on Underdog. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button down below. Amari Cooper. Again, I'm a huge fan of the Cleveland Browns offense. I really do think Deshaun is going to turn the other leaf. Amari Cooper is dealing with an injury right now, but based upon what I've read, it's not anything serious. Now, obviously, you want to monitor it, right? But nothing to be sitting here shaking in your boots, thinking about drafting Amari Cooper. He's going to be just fine. He's dealt with foot issues a lot in his career. Sucks, obviously, for maybe what could have been an even better career for Amari Cooper. He's the clear number 1 in Cleveland. They have DPJ. They have Elijah Moore. They have the Chief, David Njoku. They have the other receiver that they drafted last year, who I drafted a bunch of in best ball. His name is escaping me, but he's probably the wide receiver 4 on the team, so you're not going to see him a bunch either. Amari Cooper in an offense where Deshaun Watson bounces back. Like, Amari Cooper was really good with Kobe Brissett. So imagine what he could do if Watson returned to formal glory. So if he returns to top 3 quarterback, you just, like, what a pick. He doesn't. If he's, like, still top 12 quarterback, you're going to be really happy. And the receiver I was thinking of was David Taco Bell. At the next pick, we got the 3.08. And we're going to go with Joe Mixon. A lot of people don't like Joe Mixon. I get it. He had one huge game last season, and that helped boost him. But at the end of the day, he was still pretty consistent in the other games. I know they don't run a crazy amount in the red zone, but Samaje Perine, his biggest competition, is gone. The running backs behind him just aren't great at all. So the workload's going to be there on a really good offense. Again, I know people talk bad about him. Oh, he doesn't get a crazy amount of receptions. He only gets a couple of receptions every game. He's not that efficient. But again, this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. You don't have to be very efficient if you get a lot of carries. Derrick Henry, not very efficient recently, gets so many carries that it doesn't matter. Now, I'm not saying Joe Mixon is as good as Derrick Henry. He's fucking not. He's not. But given how good the offense is, and given the offensive line got a lot better compared to the beginning of last season, you can see a path where Joe Mixon finishes easily inside the top 12. Maybe finishes inside of the top 8-ish. At the 3.9, we are going to go with Najee Harris. Now, I've talked negatively about Najee Harris in this video. Again, I don't fully believe in Najee Harris, but what I do believe in really is that he's probably just stuck in fucking molasses as the running back 1, right? We've seen in the past, even though the Jaylen Warren hype is deserved, Jaylen Warren is good, but we know that Mike Tomlin loves the running back workhorse. He doesn't like the RBBC, the running back by committee. He loves using the workhorse back. We saw Le'Veon's jet skiing in Miami. Guess who the running back is? James fucking Conner. They have a workhorse running back. Le'Veon Bell caught smoking weed. It was D'Angelo Williams, I believe. Najee Harris gets drafted. He's the guy. Jaylen Warren looks better than Najee Harris. It's still fucking Najee Harris last season. So it's going to be Najee Harris again on an offense that should be better with a better offensive line. The problem is Najee Harris isn't proficient. I worry that there's so much positivity about Warren that maybe he does become more of an offensive option. Like, maybe he's not cutting into the carries a crazy amount, but if he's cutting in a decent amount, maybe get some more goal line work, and we could see Najee Harris really just be a huge bust in the third round. Moving next, we got Aaron Jones, running back of the Green Bay Packers. Another incredibly safe pick, in my opinion. A lot of people have ETN ranked ahead of him. I understand that Jordan Love probably isn't going to be all that amazing, but he's probably not going to be terrible either. And rookie quarterbacks, they're going to rely, he's going to dump the ball off to Aaron Jones a ton. Aaron Jones is a target hog. He feasts, he eats the targets. I know they have A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon doesn't catch passes. Aaron Jones does. They have a great defense, so even if Jordan Love is kind of a schmuck and isn't the best, they're still going to be able to run the ball late in games because of how great the defense is, and I think that helps out Aaron Jones. 311 and 312 are guys I'm not drafting at all, and that is going to be Deebo Samuel first. Deebo Samuel of the 49ers, the number one receiver there. Problem is he had one great year in his NFL career where he scored 7 gazillion touchdowns. Now they have a quarterback in Brock Purdy, who I like a decent amount. But they have Ayuk, they have Kittle, they have McCaffrey. Deebo scored a bunch of rushing touchdowns. Why are you going to run it with Deebo when you have Christian fucking McCaffrey? What happens if Trey Lance takes over? Which is still possible. I think it's going to be Big Cock Brock, but it could be Lance. Then, kerplunk. Deebo sucks because they're trying to run a bunch with Trey Lance and Christian McCaffrey. They're already going to run a bunch with McCaffrey. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Deebo isn't as good as a receiver as people think he is, if I'm being honest with you. He's not that efficient. Sure, Shanahan brought up the fact that he was getting pictures, like Deebo sending him fucking nudes of him, like he's sending pictures of with his shirt up. If I lifted my shirt up, you'd get fucking blinded because of how pale I am. But Deebo sending these pictures of him shirtless is probably a joke. It's very funny, obviously, but who cares, right? This next guy that I'm going to bring up right here, the final pick of the third round, this guy, DK Metcalf, looks like he was perfectly crafted by the gods. Pause, right? This guy looks like he's like the dream body, right? Of like what you'd want to have, right? I'm a fucking skinny, fat bastard. I wish I looked like DK Metcalf, right? I wish I was jacked. I wish I was fast. I wish I was in the NFL. I wish I was tall. I wish I didn't have to talk about this. I was in the NFL. You know how sick that would be? But I have the hands of someone that has 0 hands. I have the hands of Derrick Henry, all right? But DK Metcalf, again, Greek god. Amazingly built. Pause. Great player. Problem is, the offense, there's too many guys. They have Lockett, they got JSN, they've got Kenneth Walker, Kenneth. They've got Zach Charbonnet, and no Fant. Deebo has George Kittle, Ayuk, McCaffrey. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Joe Smith isn't good either. I know he's going to be fine for fantasy because of the weapons, but he's not a great quarterback, which hurts DK even more. I think he has the big games in him. But in the third round, I'm looking to draft a guy where I could see top 10. Like, I could see Amari Cooper, top 10, top 8. I could see Smith. You know, if something happens to A.J. Brown, Smith is going to fucking skyrocket up, right? I could see even with, like, him and A.J. Brown finishing top 8, right? The Eagles' offense is just that good. I just can't see Seattle being that amazing of an offense with that great of running backs, like, and having 3 fucking great receivers. Like, I just don't see how Metcalf or Deebo. Thank you all for watching. If you ended up enjoying, I know this was a long one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.